Hello everyone and welcome. Make a cup of your favorite drink and get comfortable because this is a wonderful time for new stories from Yellowcat. Send your own stories in the comments below and maybe they'll be in our new video. What are your homeowners association HOA horror stories, part 2? My old condo HOA was a pain in the a bunch of crusty old farts and bees. When I first moved in, the monthly fee was right about $250. During my first year of living there, they did a special assessment fee to fill the account back up. Everyone now owed another $1,500. I spoke with the board and told them that I just moved in and should not owe the money. I even went through the bylaws, which clearly stated that in this circumstance, the homeowner would be exempt from special assessment within their first 6 months. I had been there around 5 months and 2 weeks. So what did they do? Apparently, there were a handful of people like myself who had moved in around the same time. What did they do? They voted to change that law to 90 days. Bam! When can we expect your check, sir? Another incident was when I wanted to install a security screen door. A normal security door is like $80 at Home Depot. I noticed that the other homes with security doors seem to all look the same. I asked the HOA where I get one of those doors. Turns out it was a special order door from Dixie Line and ran me over $400 for the door plus shipping. Then they wouldn't let me install it myself. I had to call their authorized installer who charged me $150 to put it up. GD almost $600 for a stupid security door that should have cost me under $100. FHOAs. A woman on our condo board refers to herself as the parking N. She makes homemade notices and has these huge red official warning stamps she puts across them. Whenever my father pulls out the car and parks it next to the garage because he needs more space to work, she puts a notice on his car. He is literally 10 feet away. Then he hangs them up in the garage on display. She is such a P, everyone hates her. She is such a D to my dad because he can't speak English well, so he just gets worked up. My cat S is in her front yard though. What an effing team player. Nothing noteworthy, but I lived next door to the president of the HOA once, and literally every single week we had a ticket for something new. Trash touching the curb instead of just being on the grass awaiting pickup, cars in the driveway protruding 1 inch into the sidewalkway, many more extremely pressing matters as well. Nothing has happened to me yet, but this did happen in my city. A vet who was deployed in Iraq got his home foreclosed on by his HOA for failure to pay an $800 fee. Apparently, his wife forgot to pay it while he was gone, and sold his $300K house for $3.5K. Luckily, the guy took the HOA to court because when they filed for the foreclosure, they said he was off duty knowing he was deployed and that the law protects servicemen. They almost universally suck, but I do have one good story about an HOA. Sometimes they aren't bad, but those are usually the exception. Some crotchety people in my family's previous neighborhood were talking about forming one and sent everyone a list of rules they would enact. My father and all of our neighbors on our cul-de-sac realized how terrible they would be, so they formed their own HOA before the crotchety people filed theirs. Since the one for the cul-de-sac was already formed, the other one couldn't claim it as under their jurisdiction. They didn't do much of anything other than get together and drink a beer once a month. They asked one guy to get his sprinklers fixed because one was spraying at another person's window in the middle of the night. No fines, just went over and politely asked him to get it taken care of. My mom lives in a small subdivision where everything is controlled by the HOA. I mean everything. They have Christmas decoration inspectors and even a committee to approve landscaping. Elections are held and the whole place turns into a campaign battleground. There are posters and phone messages as well as in-person visits from candidates. Oh, and they have a committee to ensure the posters are placed correctly. It's like a suburban retirement community version of 1930s Berlin. Grandmother's house was in gated community across the state from me. Grandmother passes away. Spend a few days at her home packing and clearing in prep of selling her home. Must be at work on Monday. Leave first thing Sunday morning to Goodwill with a bunch of donations inside rented U-Haul so that, when I return, I can load all the furniture and items we will keep in the truck to make the long drive back home. Upon return from Goodwill, Lady at Gate will not let moving truck in the community because they are not allowed on Sunday. Are you effing kidding me, .jpg? Refuses to budge. Had to move all the things from the house using a small vehicle to the U-Haul parked on the side of the road outside the community. F HOAs, F gated communities, F stupid small-minded people. You will never see Soul Blue Soul pay any effing body monthly for the pleasure of residing in their midst. Mother-in-law got a fine for her house/yard not being well kept. Apparently, after a storm comes through that breaks tree branches and rips shingles from your house, you have 1 day to fix everything before being fined. It probably didn't help that she had butted heads with the board over her fence a few months before. Some friends of ours lived in a condo development that had a pretty strict HOA. One time overnight, the wife's car was jacked up, placed on cinder blocks, and the wheels were stolen. She discovered this as she left to go to work and then went inside to call some people to get things rectified. She had to go into work that day, so her husband drove her in on his way to work. That evening, when they got home, there was a notice in their mailbox indicating the HOA was going to fine them for having an abandoned vehicle in their reserve spot. Seriously? Ugh. We set up a monthly transfer of $25 so we wouldn't have to come up with the $300 in a lump at the end of the year. We used the autopay feature that was offered by the HOA. The year goes by and we get a bill that says we owe them $275 plus late fees. I was confused, so I went and looked up my bank statement to see what happened. Apparently, their software was faulty and every single time it would fail. There was more than enough every time to cover the payment, and no notice was ever sent to us. Here, I will state, this is also my fault for not watching it. Anyway, I contact them to let them know what happened and that I did not have that much just sitting around, so it would take me a little extra time to get it, but no one would respond to me, and as time passed, my late fees just kept piling up. After several attempts and people actually blowing me off and giving me the runaround, "Oh, it's too late, it's with collections now. I have no idea which one, but you have to contact them." I just gave up and thought, F you power-tripping D-heads, see if I care. Well, little did I realize, in the state of Texas, they can take your house, and they started the process to do so. I was then given a bill for the yearly amount, the late fees, fines that had come up since then for not keeping grass out of my flower bed, and their court costs. A loan for $1,300 later, I was right with my HOA and got to keep my house. And still, to this day, I want to run into the street and bash their stupid little cars when I see them in my neighborhood. My wife and I wanted to build an addition for an exercise room onto the back of the house. We back up to woods. Nobody could see it. We applied for it 2 years in a row, $300 per time, and only allowed to apply once per year. We were denied both times. In year 3, we applied again, but this time we called it a wine cellar. Same plans, same everything. Of course, it was approved unanimously. We make sure we keep a bottle of $2 Chuck on the windowsill. I was the treasurer of a 16-unit HOA with an absentee president who didn't do S. I collected over $8,000 in back dues from deadbeat owners that he was ignoring completely. So the association was finally doing well financially to afford some extra perks. I told our trash pickup company that we wanted to renegotiate our contract and add a recycling dumpster. It ended up being $5 more per month. That was also the month I announced I'd be leaving the building to move into a house I was buying. One of the other owners immediately accused me of stealing from the association, cited the addition of the recycling bin as proof. WTF, right? and demanded immediate disclosure of 6 years worth of financial records so he could prove I was stealing. I told him to go F himself in front of all of the other homeowners at a meeting, gave him the records, and resigned. My parents lived in an HOA neighborhood when I lived at home. I work as a painter, so they asked me to paint their house for a little cash. They wanted a neutral beige color, absolutely nothing obtrusive. I went through HOA, approved the color, they said it was fine, so I went ahead and did it. A few days after I was done, we received a phone call saying the new color of our house was an offensive shade of beige that didn't fit in with the setting of the neighborhood, and that we'd have to revert it. Nothing I did seemed to work. I couldn't win and didn't really have the time to take it any further. We had to paint it back and lost an S-ton of money. Another time, my stepdad and I built a pretty awesome trailer from scratch when I was a bit younger. It was a few inches taller than our fence when it was done and could be seen from the front of the house wherever we put it. HOA told us that we'd have to dispose of it for this reason and that we couldn't just make our fence a little higher instead because it was an eyesore. I rented a townhouse in a community with an HOA. We always tried to abide by their rules and never caused any trouble apart from when we'd go on vacation and let our grass get a few days too long. I had to park my car on the street in our assigned spot, but it was less than 50 feet from my front door. It was the end of the month, and with my luck at work, I had to close that night and open the next morning. By the time I got home, I made a beeline right to bed. As I drifted off to sleep, my brain made that frantic reminder that the next morning was a new month and I needed to put my registration stickers on my license plates or I would be given a ticket by the police. That would have been less hassle than what happened. I had come home at 10 o'clock that night. I opened the door, registration stickers in hand, and was ready to leave at 6 o'clock that morning. When I saw my car, I thought it had been vandalized. Upon inspection, the HOA's towing company had placed no less than 15 10x10 stickers over every window that explained my car was illegally parked due to expired registration. I had to call out of work because I couldn't see out of my windshield enough to drive. I admit to have been a bit lazy in not putting the stickers on, but it was expired for 6 hours on the street. It took me longer than that to get my car cleaned off. My mom is an incredible landscape architect who has written 2 books on the subject. We live in a good-sized house in the suburbs. When my parents first moved in, our entire front and backyard was just grass. My mom didn't like this, so she spent years outside gardening and developed our yard into something really beautiful and unique. Basically, keep in mind, I know nothing about landscape architecture. We had 2 small patches of grass on either side of our driveway, which is surrounded by a multitude of well-maintained bushes and flowers. After my mother had spent years on this project, the HOA sends us a letter about how there is a designated amount of grass that every yard must have. Our yard looked amazing, and my mom was clearly distraught, so she ignored the letter. They sent more and more until an HOA representative came out. The person was being a total jerk to my mother and threatening legal action, so my mother heard them out, then calmly responded with, "Thank you for making the trip out here, Mr. Something I forgot. But before you take legal action, I should have you know my father-in-law is a lawyer who has been certified to testify before the Supreme Court. This is true. And between you and me, he doesn't make a habit of losing cases, especially those as mundane as this." The man was slightly taken aback and stuttering something before my mom added, "I'm a determined woman, and as you can see from my garden, when I start something, I make sure I finish it my way. If you don't stop pestering us, I'll see to it that your whole organization is taken down. Get the F off my property and have a good day." Never heard from the HOA again. If you want to watch the part 1, click the link here. Thank you for watching. Guys, thank you for all the support and the likes. Subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet. See you next time.